So I handle all the communications on behalf of the judges and court administration for the circuit, which is a 4-county regional circuit in Florida. I handle all the media requests, including television coverage of our court cases, as well as public records requests. I handle handle a host of public relations duties as well. Student requests, interest from the public, court events, various number of communications type work. Rather unpredictable, because a large part of my job is being a liaison to the media. So my weeks will vary depending on if there are a lot of cases that are of interest to the media, if there are several what I would consider high profile in which several media outlets are wanting to cover the case. Before I started working for the courts, I was a journalist for 20 years. And during that time, I covered lots of court cases and became very familiar with how a trial runs in Florida. And so since I knew how to cover a trial from the media end of it, when I came to the court, it was very helpful because I understood what the media will be looking for or will be needing or wanting when they want to cover a trial. For high-profile cases, that's something I would consider when you have multiple media outlets trying to cover a case. And so, you know, you want to balance their First Amendment right to cover the case, but you also want to maintain courtroom decorum and make sure that the defendant has a fair trial. So in order to carefully balance that, we have certain rules that are in place to not necessarily, to simply manage the amount of cameras, the amount of coverage that we have. So for example, most Florida courts have what's called a one-camera rule, which means, okay, let's say you have 5 media outlets that want to cover the case, you would set up what's called a pool rule, which means one media outlet is the one that will actually set up their camera, and all the other attending media has to share the feed. And so and this courtroom is actually specialized to accommodate that specifically. So we could have as many as 6 or 10 media outlets covering the same case, but they'll be all pulling the same feed and recording it at the same time. Any media that's covering the case has to abide by our media rules. So that includes the pool camera rules if those are in effect. Several judges find that the use of cell phone videos, you pull the cell phone up and hold it up, they find that very distracting, and jurors have found that distracting, so most judges will not allow that during court. So several judges have said no use of cell phone cameras in those ways. It is, still a criminal trial, and the defendant has various rights, and the judge's most important job is to make sure that the defendant has a fair trial. So there are certain rules that we put in place to try and accommodate that. So for example, juror anonymity is a very important factor. We need to have jurors who will keep an open mind, who won't be tainted by anything that they may watch or view. So judges are very conscious of whether jurors may be influenced by something they read in a newspaper or saw online or saw posted on Facebook. There's lots of warnings and discussions about that with jurors as they're being introduced to a trial. And so so certainly one of the rules that I always discuss with media covering a trial is, please avoid the jurors, you can't talk to them, you can't video their faces, you can't photograph them. But most people understand that because they understand the importance of juror anonymity. Oh, I think it does have an effect. I mean, and this is just my experience of having worked in media for as long as I did. People act differently in front of a camera. They always do. Sometimes good, sometimes bad, but they become very conscious. And so I think there's an impact there, but how to measure what that actually changes is, I think, impossible to really know. But I think that's just human nature. People act differently in front of a camera.